Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the freshman Democratic senator from New York, is making waves in Washington, but maybe not for the reasons why we thought. And why is the Republican Party and people who support the Republican Party so mad at her? Find out now on the Ruben J. Report. My name is Ruben J. So it's no surprise to anybody that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is making waves in Washington. I mean, she's been making waves since she won a Democratic primary in New York, a majority-minority area of New York, a part of New York that she only won 12,000 votes. So she's not, to say that she won is really like saying, yeah, she won in Little League. It's not a huge deal. It's not that big of a deal. The big part of the deal is who she beat. And I don't remember the guy's name, but it was a longtime congressman from New York. She dethroned him by winning 12,000 votes. Not a huge margin, not a huge vote, not a huge win. So we're going to dive into why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is pissing off the right. But before we do, this podcast is brought to you by me, Ruben J. So please do me a favor, like my Facebook page, follow my Instagram, follow me on YouTube and Twitter. Everything is at The Ruben J. YouTube.com/The Ruben J. Facebook.com/The Ruben J. Twitter.com/The Ruben J. Instagram.com/The Ruben J. Please follow me on all those social media platforms so that way you can find out more about when this podcast is coming out. We're going to be doing a podcast test every single day this week just to see the best days that they get responses and just see if we can, handle the workload of a 5-day-a-week podcast. It's just a couple minutes a day. Not a huge deal, but please help us out by liking and subscribing to all of our platforms. It's a big deal for us to do that, and I appreciate the support in any increment. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as the cool kids call her, which is what I'm going to call her because I'm having a hard time actually saying her name, to be completely honest. There are a few reasons why people are upset at her, and the first thing I'm going to talk about with AOC is over the weekend there was a video of her dancing to the Breakfast Club that got out on Twitter, and somebody with the Twitter handle anonymous anonymous Q. Well, I can't talk today. Basically said, wow, this is unbecoming of a young lady. She is not somebody who we should be allowing to lead or partially lead our country. And apparently there were a small amounts of Republicans who also thought that AOC dancing in her early 20s was unbecoming of a congresswoman. And I went and I watched the video, and I tried finding legitimate complaints from people in mainstream media who are on the right about AOC's dancing. And the consensus that I found, that I seem to be able to find, was that nobody actually had a problem with the fact that she was dancing. Nobody had a problem with her dancing at all. If anything, I feel like more people on the right actually saw her dancing and were like, wow, this is, makes it really relatable. I actually like this girl. I know I walked away having, a little bit more like a, wow, she's really, really cool, really cute, like this is a cute dance. Like this isn't something to be upset about. But apparently there are people on the right who are upset about this. But what I saw more than not is I saw this idea of the left was swinging this idea of AOC being, it's so weird. AOC being somebody who isn't like, here's what I felt like. I felt like people on the left were taking this idea and creating a fake spin that people on the right were upset about this just so they have something to complain about. Like I felt like people on the left, this was their way of trying to find a way that they could denounce her in a sense. That's what I feel like. It's not what happened, but it's what I feel like. I feel like there was this fake rage from people on the left about, or real rage about fake rage of people on the right. So the left were really upset about a fake movement against AOC that happened over the weekend. I have friends on Facebook. I have people in my life that are lefties that like to every time they have a chance to bring up why the Trumps are flawed, love to do that. And I have friends on the right as well who like to bring up every chance someone on the left is flawed. But I saw nobody. I saw nothing. Nobody of any credibility. Nobody with any sort of clout or stance in this world that actually had a problem with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dancing to the Breakfast Club. Nobody had a problem with it. Nobody whatsoever that I saw. And nobody with credibility. And nobody that the left should be, giving credibility to for this. But the people on the left wanted to give this fake rage some reality to it. And of course I saw, Occupy Democrats, a page I like to call Occupy Stupidity. I saw them, of course, try to make a big deal of this and say, dancing to, the Breakfast Club is unbecoming of a woman, but posing naked, and then having pictures of Melania Trump in her 20s naked at some point side by side and saying, but one of these is unbecoming of a woman. Well, first of all, neither one of those is unbecoming of a woman. Like, if a woman wants to pose naked in, a risque magazine, like, go for it. Especially, especially if that's what she wants to do. If she's not doing it because other people are making her do it, like, go for it, girl. Go do you. You do you, boo. That's my life motto. You do you, boo. So, but there's so much fake rage on the left about this. It's just hilarious. I think people have more of a claim for, the freshman congresswoman who said, like, let's impeach this MFer. We have more of a problem with that. I personally don't have a problem with it because it was in a bar. It wasn't under official government. It wasn't like in a press release or a press conference as a congresswoman. It was, pre-sworn in at a bar. I think it was a press event, but I don't care. Like, if people want to say, MFer all the time, like, go for it. You do you. Again, it's not that big of a deal. And we also have people who, we have bigger reasons to be upset with AOC. Like, for instance, part 2 of this conversation, the real reason why the right should be upset with AOC and why I cannot wait for her term to come up, because she proposed on 60 Minutes this last weekend. Anderson Cooper was interviewing her and asking her, how do you plan to pay for this massive Green New Deal, which is tens of trillions of dollars worth of added expenses, tens of trillion, trillion, okay, not billion, not million, trillions of dollars. The plan is to basically be emissions free in 12 years, which is impossible. Impossible, even if we had $50 trillion sitting in the bank. 100% impossible to do in 12 years. 50 years, maybe. 70 years, probably. But 12 years, impossible. Or relatively impossible. Especially considering that only 17% of our infrastructure is set up for reusable energy. It's not something that can happen overnight. It's not like, saying, every American now gets one free cheeseburger from McDonald's. Like, that's an easy thing to do. That's an easy fix. That's pretty easy to come up with 300 million, hamburgers across the United States. It's a totally different, silly example. But that's the point. Like, you can't go from 12% of renewable or 17% of renewable energies to 100% renewable energy. It's just impossible in 12 years, especially in 12 years. So Anderson Cooper asked her, how do you plan on paying for this? And her response, and we'll play the clip here in a second, was basically saying that, the rich, the super rich, should pay a marginal tax rate on their $10 millionth and above. So let's go ahead. Let's play the clip from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez telling Anderson Cooper that the rich should be taxed at 70%.
What is the problem with trying to push our technological capacities to the furthest extent possible?
This would require, though, raising taxes.
There's an element where, people are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes.
Do you have a specific on the tax rate?
You look at our tax rates back in the 60s, and when you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from $0 to $75,000 may be 10% or 15%, et cetera. But once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. That doesn't mean all $10 million are taxed at an extremely high rate, but it means that as you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more.
So it's absolutely insane to even put that out in the atmosphere. It's absolutely insane for people to think that it's okay for anybody, I don't care if you're a billionaire, I don't think it's fair for anybody to pay 70% of any dollar that they earn. I mean, we as Americans are already overtaxed. It's an overtaxed system that is broken because it's broke. You know, we pay on average 40% total or more of our income in taxes between federal, state, and sales and the whole 9 yards. 40% of our income, for every dollar, 40 cents goes to taxes. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And not only that, but then think on top of that, you know, you have to pay car registration, you have to pay for licensings. You know, if you run a business, you have to pay, you know, you have to be paid to be a corporation. All this stuff is ridiculously expensive to do. We're already overtaxed. Then to add, for those who are extremely successful, to add another, you know, a 70% tax, even at their $10 millionth dollar, is absolutely insane. I was listening to Ben Shapiro earlier, and he made a really good point. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically he brought up Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You know, The Rock, highest paid movie star. I believe it was $85 million. I'm not sure. Maybe it was 65. It was either 65 or 85. But the point was that, you know, if you take his $10 million, that was probably taxed at 20%. Okay, his first 10 million, probably 20% tax. And this is not counting any write-offs or anything with his businesses or anything like that. I mean, he has a couple businesses that he runs. You take $10 million, and then, you know, he gets taxed 20% of that. So $2 million of that goes to taxes, $8 million left over. Not a bad deal. Okay. Now, let's just say 65 million, I think was what the number was. You know, if he made 65 million total, that means $55 million of his total $65 million brought in is being taxed at 70%. Okay. And either way, whatever the number was, Ben Shapiro basically broke it down to that after taxes, he would only make $18 million. And you know, I'm sitting here in my podcast studio and thinking, man, I would love to have $18 million. I would love to build some real podcast studios and buy some property or whatever. With $18 million, I can do that. You know, so why would anybody complain at making $18 million? Well, why people were complaining is because he should have made $65 million taxed at 20%. So he would have had $50 million or whatever. I'm terrible at math, by the way, guys. So the whole point is, you know, just because somebody makes $10 million doesn't mean that they have a right to spend or to pay more in taxes. No, if anything, you know, you give them incentives to put that money back into the economy themselves. You tell them, hey, go open up a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson restaurant and employ people in Los Angeles or in Miami, where he would probably actually start a restaurant. You know, you don't tell rich people, hey, we're going to take all your money after a certain point, to the point where you're going to probably want to hide your money. What's going to end up happening is, guess what? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is going to make 2 movies, which, side note, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson should probably slow down on the movie making thing, and I think people are getting tired of him, but that's way beside the point. But you have to realize that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he's working really hard, and you got to realize that the amount of money that he brings in for other people, for people who are working on his movies, for people who wrote the movies, for people who are showing the movies in the theater, for people who are, you know, creating the posters for his movie, the people who are helping promote the movies, the people who are helping to promote The Rock, the amount of money that he generates for the economy alone should be worth giving the guy a tax break. Same with local business owners, same with really big business owners. Now, I would understand if, like, it was an optional thing where, you know, Dwayne Johnson can say, here, you know what, I feel like I should give more money to the government. Like, here's an extra 20% of my income. You know, that's totally acceptable as well if he wanted to voluntarily give up his money. But to say, hey, Dwayne, you made $100 million, you made $90 million over the normal tax rate. We're going to go ahead and we're going to tax you now at 70% of $90 million. Insane. Think about it that way. If he made $110 million, $100 million of that being taxed at 70%, that means he walks away with $38 million out of $100 million. Absolutely insane. How would you feel? Like, honestly, how would you feel if I came to you and said, all right, listen, Steve, I'm in charge of taxing people now, and after your 10th dollar that you make, I'm going to take 70% of your 10th dollar and I'm going to give it to somebody else. And for every dollar over your 10th dollar, I'm also going to tax you at 70%. So you make $20, you actually only make 13. And you're like, well, hold on a minute. I have a family to feed. In the case of Dwayne Johnson, where he's making $65 million, he's probably thinking, I have a business to run. So that makes this idea of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's marginal tax rate at 70% absolutely insane, and then she says things like we have to be morally right. Well, there's nothing moral about taking 70% of someone's hard-earned money, no matter how much money they have, no matter how much money they hoard, no matter how much money they put, in offshore's account, which I'm okay with. But you have to at some point stop and say, when is enough? And I think we are at enough, especially in California. That's a whole different story. But to say we're going to tax more people to pay for things that are extraordinarily expensive is just reckless. 100% reckless. So I want to know what you think, though. Let me know in the comments down below, especially if you're listening to this on YouTube or Facebook. Post down below. Let me know what you think. I'm all for trying to clean up stuff and try to make the air fresh and trying to make sure that we can, live on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years more. But I'm not okay with taxing people in the process to do it. I'd rather you say, hey, we're putting this in place. The government alone is going to put in place this plan so that in 100 years, maybe we are emissions and carbon free. And if we're not, then we'll try again and we'll do something on our own, but we're not going to put the burden of the bill on the taxpayers to tax people. So, but what do you think? Do you think that a marginal tax rate at 70% or any percentage is for the best, for the best of the United States? What do you think about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Do you think that she's a loon after watching her on 60 Minutes, or do you like her? I would like to know. Leave a comment down below. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to like my Facebook page. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at TheRubenJ. And I will see you guys tomorrow afternoon.